here? 100 even? Who got 100 even? Okay. So this angle here is 100. You have to find that angle because that's your pair. Because you need to know, for law of sines, you need to know a pair, an angle side pair. So let's go ahead and set up our ratio. So I have sine of 100 over 250. So I'm going to find x first. And across from x is the 41 degree. So when you cross multiply that, you would have x equals, and it'll be 250 sine 41 divided by the sine of 100. Which, and of course I don't have my answer key with me, so I got to do this.
166.54.
Thank you. 166.54. What is this? Feet?
Yeah.
Feet. All right, who had that answer? Who agrees? 166.54. All right, now we need to do the same thing to find the distance for ship. So we found that ship A is 166 feet approximately away from the port. So now let's figure out how far ship B is away. So for ship B, I'm going to still use the sine of 100. Now you could use, technically, you could use this as a pair, the 144 and the 40 sine 41, but I always stick with what I'm given because if I mess this up, then at least I know I have a shot at getting the next part right. All right, so sine of 100 over 250 equals sine of 39 over y. And when we do our proportion, it will be y equals 250 sine 39 divided by the sine of 100, which gives us that y equals, what you get, Nathan?
159.76.
Okay. All right, who agrees with our two answers? You pause right there. Any questions about how to set up the law signs, the opposite angle pairs? So which ship is closer to the port?
Should be.
Should be, right? Because we figured out that this distance here is about 159 from here to here, and from here to here is about a 166. So that would mean that ship B is closer to the port. You will see a question very similar to this. But does anybody know, this is not really my favorite question, but from geometry, we probably should have knew that before doing law sides. Does anyone know, remember that from geometry? Like, how can you tell which one is the longer side? Just from looking at the triangle. The angle side, yeah. So I knew that this side was going to be shorter because whatever your smallest angle is, the side opposite is going to be the shortest side. So the side opposite of a 39 angle is definitely going to be shorter than the side opposite of a 41 degree angle. But you got to show that you know how to use law signs, so that's the way you can kind of validate your answer moving forward. All right, so now let's talk about the ambiguous case. So I'm going to actually send out a video for you to watch that also describes the ambiguous case. So when you're doing law signs, if you have that bad word backwards, side, angle, okay, then it is an ambiguous case, meaning that it's possible that that third side is going to create no triangle, two triangle, or only one triangle. So it's kind of hard for me to draw it out, but so you don't have to draw this. But if you have these two sides. So I have a side, and I have an angle. We don't know if this third side here, if this third side is going to be long enough to connect. We also don't know if it's going to be just long enough to connect to create one triangle, or it could be long and create two triangles, so it could swing two different ways. All right, so again, it's kind of hard for me to draw the representation, and that's why I'm going to send out a video today on Canvas for you to watch. It's just a video, like an animation, that makes it a little bit easier to understand how you can have more than one triangle, okay? So let's go ahead and start working through it. So these questions, when it is the ambiguous case where you have two sides and an angle, sometimes you have to solve two separate triangles, okay? So let's go ahead and look at this example here. Let's label our triangle as we always do. So let's do that. So we have triangle, we'll say it's triangle ABC. They didn't tell us the third side, the third letter, but we'll say it's ABC. And let's go ahead and label our side. So I know little a is 3. And I know little b is 8. And I know angle A is 42. So first thing first, let's figure out how many triangles we have. So if we look at this first one, we have to start with finding what? What do we have to, because we only have one angle. So that means that in order to solve this triangle, I need to find two angles and one side. So we have our pair. So we're going to start off with these two because we don't really have any other choice. So we're going to start with sine of 42. Over 3. And we have to start by finding angle B. Okay, so we don't know angle B. So we're going to start here, which will be the sine of B over 8. Now, because we're trying to find an angle, we will need to do the inverse function. So let's start by cross multiplying. And when I cross multiply, I have 8 sine 42 equals 3 times the sine of angle B. I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So I have 8 sine 42 over 3 equals the sine of B. And then lastly, I have to do the inverse. So I'm going to take the inverse sine of both sides. So this is what you have to put in your calculator. So when you did that, what did you get? Do you have to put the who in? Are you all getting an error?
Yeah.
So you feel like you're doing it wrong? So, but you're not doing it wrong. So because this is an error, that means that this combination that we have here cannot form a triangle. Okay? So we get an error, and the reason why is because no triangle can be formed. There is no way that I can get this to actually close and create a triangle, given that one side is 8, 3, and an angle of 42. So we have no triangle. Remember, when you have, that's why it's ambiguous. It's ambiguous because we don't know. We don't know if we're going to be able to form a triangle. So when you're doing these on your own or on the test, if you get an error, that means that you have no triangle. That's what that means. I know. I was kind of setting y'all up. So I'm sure I saw y'all typing it in 2 or 3 times. I'm like, okay. There's no triangle, that's why. So when you're doing this, let's look at the directions. It says, if you have 2 sides and an angle, we have to determine whether the given information gives you 1, 2, or no. So this is an example where there is no triangle at all. All right, so let's go ahead and look at example 6. Let's see what this gives us. So again, we have our ABC. So little a is 2, little b is 3, and angle A is 34. So we have our pair. I don't know if I posted the recording from yesterday. I gotta check. I don't remember. Okay, so we have the sine of 34 over 2 equals the sine of b over 3. Go ahead, cross multiply and solve that for angle B. All right, who got 57 degrees? All right, let's go ahead and type it in. So this time we know we get at least 1. We didn't get an error.
Wait, what'd you do?
57. So we know we have at least 1 triangle, but it could be 2. All right, so let's go ahead and cross multiply this. When you multiply this direction, you get 2 sine B. And then you go this direction, and you have 3 sine 34. We're going to divide both sides by 2. So that would be the sine of angle B equals 3 times the sine of 34 divided by 2. And then you take the inverse sine of both sides. So this is what you want to type in your calculator. Let me see. Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. This one should not be an error. Let me make sure though. I'm gonna retype it in. Yeah, I got 57. Anybody else need help typing it in? Josue, did you get 57? Yeah. You got 57? Calculator.
Yeah, it's like,
Oh, it's not coming up with a fraction bar. I gotta figure out how to reset that. Grab another calculator. And then I'll take that one. I gotta figure out how to reset the mode so that it comes up with a calculator. I'll reset it.
you rather just your result, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna do it in there, so. Okay, so we don't know though, because this is ambiguous. I'm gonna call this B1 because we don't know yet if there's going to be two triangles. So we'll talk about that in a second. So we know we have our, over here, I'm gonna list what we have. So for our first, we know we have at least one triangle, okay? So over here I have A is 34. Then I'm gonna call this B1 is 57. Go ahead and find C1 using triangle sum. So let's find C1. In order to find C1, I would take 180 minus A1 minus B1. Go ahead, type that in. And what did you get for angle C? 89 degrees. Who got 89 degrees? All right, so now the last thing we need to find for this first triangle scenario is what? What don't we know? What side don't we know?
C.
C. So we got to find little c1. Okay, so let's find that. So in order to find little c, I'm going to use my sine 34 over 2 and set that equal to the sine of c, which we figured out was 89 over c. So this time, do we need to use inverse? Are we trying to find an angle? No. So just go ahead and solve that. This is little c1. So we have little c is going to equal 2 times the sine of 89 over the sine of 34. And if you type that in, you should get about 3.2. Who got about 3.2? I got 3.178.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let me double check. Oh yeah, I put sine 39. You're right. Yeah. So I got about 3.6, we'll say. So do we agree with little c, 3.6? All right, so this would be my first triangle. So we know that we have at least one triangle. So now let's see, excuse me, if that third side, because that third side could create two triangles, depending on how it connects to the bottom. It could be just long enough to create one triangle, or it could be long enough that it could create two different triangles. So let's go ahead and figure out, do we have enough information for the second triangle? All right, so triangle 2, A is still 34, that doesn't change. For our second scenario, we're gonna take B1 and subtract that from 180. So B1 is 57, so take 180 minus 57. If I can switch to the right pen, okay. And that tells us that our possible second triangle, because we don't know yet if this is going to work, but our possible second triangle for B2 would equal what? What's 180 minus 57? 123. Now, the way you'll know if you have a second triangle is if you have enough, because remember, if there's enough left over to form a third angle, then we have a second triangle. Okay? So, is there possible for me to have a C2? C2 would have to equal, in other words, if these two numbers are greater than 180 already, that means we can't form a second triangle, right? Because triangle sum has to be less than 180. But are these two numbers added together greater than 180? Is 123 and 34 greater than 180? All right, so what would the third angle be? If my angle 2 is really 123, that means C2 would have to be what? So you would have to take 180 and subtract 123 and 34. So 123 and 34 will give you what? 23. All right, so now let's go ahead and find what side little C2 would be, and then we'll be finished. So let's find what would side C2 equal. So for side C2, it would be, let me set up my ratio. So for side C2, it would be the sine of 34 over 2. But now that's going to equal the angle C, which we figured out could be 23 over little c. Go ahead and solve that for little c. And we're going to practice this more tomorrow. The ambiguous case takes a long time. And if I don't send out that video on Canvas, we'll watch it during class tomorrow. Because I do think this is one of the scenarios where a visual, like a video, would be helpful. I was trying to find one that wasn't super complicated. A lot of videos are just really complicated, like too complicated. So let's see if I did this one right. I got 1.4. Yeah. Okay. So how many triangles did we have in this scenario? We had 2 triangles. And we solved them both. So this will be triangle 1 information. So this is triangle 1. And this is triangle 2. So we did an example where we had no triangle. And then we also did an example where there were 2 triangles. And we had to solve them both. Okay, we're going to end there.